My name is Jeff Smith, and I have a unique faith-based story where my cardiologist gave me only about 24 hours to live. Thankfully, he was wrong, but the lessons I learned from the experience, I can only hope will give us all a sense of hope and confidence to live and persevere each day. So it was the big 4-0, my 40th birthday. I wanted to stay healthy, so I decided to start running more. And on my first run, I had some chest pain. So after a ton of tests at the clinic, I had gone home and my cardiologist called and asked to see Cindy and I both in his office immediately. We walked into the clinic and they ushered us directly into his personal office. He came in, looked up from his notes and said, "Jeff, I don't know how to tell you this, but your mitral valve has been blown through and your blood is free-flowing through the chambers of your heart. Your heart is getting larger and larger, and quite frankly, it could explode. This is happening very quickly and you may not have much time left. You need to get your affairs in order."
It was devastating and scary and heartbreaking, and all of those emotions, are going through at once, but you just immediately go into prep mode of, how life is going to be after this.
He gave us the plan for a flight the next day to a regional hospital to try and save my life, but this was easy math. I may only have 24 hours to live. On the way home, we decided to call Marcy, a strong woman of faith and a prayer warrior for sure. And after sharing what the doctor had said, Marcy said something kind of odd. She said, "Jeff, I'll pray about this, and as soon as I hear from God as to what you're supposed to do, I'll call you back." Well, that response seemed a little odd, but honestly, I didn't think much more about it. The next morning, I got a call from Marcy. She quickly told me what I was supposed to do. She said, "I just saw Dr. Mehmet Oz on Good Morning America, and he was talking about your heart surgery. He was describing a new piece of equipment, a robotic arm that he can use to fix your heart. She said, you need to call him right away." My only response that I could respectfully muster was, "Well, that sounds kind of crazy, Marcy," and I sort of laughed and said thank you and an awkward "have a nice day," thinking there's no way I'd be trying to call Dr. Oz.
We had confidence in her. We wouldn't have asked her to pray for us in the first place, but when she said that, I just thought, oh, sweet Marcy, but we'll wait and see what God has to say about it.
Well, a few minutes later, a friend of mine called, and I immediately started telling him about this crazy conversation I had had with Marcy, and I mocked her, and he stopped me and said, "So let me get this straight. You called Marcy, asked her to pray for you. She said not only would she pray, but she would call you as soon as she heard from God and tell you exactly what to do. Then she does exactly that, and you don't want to call Dr. Oz?" I said, "Exactly. I'm not calling some celebrity." His only comment was, "Call me back after you've spoken with him." And he hung up on me. Long story short, I called Dr. Oz's office. I got his voicemail, left a detailed message knowing I would never hear anything back. And 7 minutes later, I hear, "Dr. Oz on line 2.
It's one of those moments that you just kind of shake your head and say, oh God, you never failed to surprise me or impress me.
Dr. Oz was cordial and knowledgeable, and ultimately we chose what we believed were God-led steps to have an experimental heart surgery done by Dr. Oz and his team in New York. And on the morning of my surgery, for the first time in my life, I suddenly began to question my faith. As they started to roll me down the hall toward the operating room, I was feeling so alone, and it seemed so cold. I just prayed, "God, let me know that you're with me. Let me know that I'm not facing this alone." And then I told Cindy goodbye, trying to keep the drama down as much as possible. And I turned my focus back to God, who had chosen not to send me any sign from my last prayer. And I continued to pray, or maybe it was more like beg, "Please, Father, give me a sign. I know I'm probably not supposed to ask for a sign, but truly, God, it is so cold and I'm feeling so alone right now." And as we moved further into the operating room, it got even colder. I couldn't get over the empty feeling inside. What had happened to my faith? Was I really so dependent on recognition of a sign to believe? What happens next can only be recognized if you're looking for God to move.
I'm praying and asking God just to be present and let me feel His presence, and I look up and there's a gentleman walking into the waiting room holding 2 cups of coffee, and there's no one else there, so I'm waiting for the next person to come in that he's carrying their coffee for. And he walks straight up to me, and I look up at him and I realize he's a deacon from our church in Roswell, New Mexico. And I didn't know him well, I knew who he was, and he hands me a cup of coffee and he said, "I've been looking everywhere for you." Well, he and his family were in New York for a day after a cruise, and he heard that Jeff was having surgery and came and stayed the day with me and sat with me and prayed with me and was truly the angel that God sent to keep me company and to be there to support and encourage me through that. It meant everything. It meant God was supplying every minute need that we needed at that time.
And about that time, we had arrived to the actual operating table, and I heard one of the staff say, "Okay, let's move to the cutting board." Really? The cutting board? Is that really that level of sensitivity at this moment? And again, I thought, really, God? No sign? I'll stop the story here to share with you 2 things about me that are very important to understand what happened next. The first is that I'm crazy about my wife, Cindy. And secondly, I love to have a cup of chai every morning. A gentleman off to my right side walked up, grabbed my hand, and introduced himself as the anesthesiologist. He told me that he was responsible for putting me to sleep, but more importantly, to wake me up. He said, "My name is difficult to pronounce. It's Dr. Chyla Kaninsky." But he said, "You can call me Chai." And as that began to settle into my brain for processing, and I wondered what actually was said, a lady leaned in just right above my head and said, "Jeff, I want you to know that I'm in charge of all this equipment and all this staff that you see in this room right now. And I'm going to make absolutely certain that everything goes just right. And my name is Cindy." What happened in that very special moment was a feeling of warmth and confidence that came over me like nothing I had ever felt. I knew that God chose to give me a very special gift by providing me with a Chai and Cindy at the moment I was asking and needing to experience evidence that He was listening. I took a deep breath and relaxed. I knew then that my faith was intact, that if I were not to survive that operation, I was going to be just fine. And if I survived, I was going to be just fine. What a great place to be.